No nurse could save the sick mountain man, until an unlikely woman did the impossible and changed both of their lives forever. The snowstorm had swallowed the mountains whole. For 3 days, wind howled through the pines, shaking the cabin perched on the edge of the ridge. Inside, a man lay still on a rough wooden bed, his breath shallow, his face pale. His name was Caleb Ward, a man once known in the valley as strong as an ox and quiet as the stone he carved. But now, fever had taken him, and even the strongest men of the village whispered that he wouldn't see the next sunrise. The villagers had sent for nurses from the nearest town. One after another they came, and one after another they failed. Caleb's body burned like fire and froze like ice. His lungs rattled, his heartbeat faded, and the mountain that had always stood unbroken was now crumbling. "Nothing more can be done," one nurse said, packing her bag. "He's too far gone. The fever's taken hold of his blood." But as she left, an old woman at the door muttered, "The mountain doesn't give up so easily. Maybe it's waiting for someone who understands it." That someone came the next morning. Her name was Ilara, a woman with no medical training, no reputation, and no reason to be there. Except for one. Years ago, she had been saved by Caleb. She had been young and lost in the same woods, weak and starving after running from a life that broke her. He'd found her, given her shelter, and never asked for anything in return. She owed him everything, so when she heard he was dying, she packed her few belongings, wrapped herself in wool, and climbed the mountain in the storm. By the time she reached his cabin, night had fallen. The door creaked open and the smell of sickness filled the air. Caleb lay motionless on the bed, his skin pale, his hair damp with sweat. "Caleb," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "It's me, Ilara." His eyes fluttered, barely recognizing her. "You shouldn't have come," he rasped. "Don't talk," she said firmly. "You once saved my life. Now it's my turn." She found what little supplies remained: herbs, cloth, water, and the ashes of a fire long gone cold. She lit it again, feeding it wood until warmth crept back into the room. Then she boiled mountain herbs she knew from her mother: wild thyme, bear root, and snow blossom. The old remedies that had healed the sick long before doctors came. Night after night, she stayed by his side. She wiped his brow, changed his bandages, forced him to drink water drop by drop. Sometimes she sang softly, the kind of mountain lullabies that were half prayer, half promise. The villagers whispered that she was wasting her time. "He's as good as gone," they said. Even the trained nurses failed. But Ilara didn't care. She wasn't healing him with medicine alone. She was healing him with devotion, with patience, with the belief that sometimes love does what science cannot. Weeks passed. His fever would break, then return stronger. His breathing grew shallow again, and every time she thought she'd lose him. Yet she never stopped. When food ran low, she hiked down the slope, foraging wild berries and roots. When snow buried the path, she dug through it with her bare hands. One night, as she sat half asleep by his bedside, she felt a hand touch hers. Caleb's eyes were open. "Ilara." His voice was faint, but real. "You're still here?" She smiled, tears filling her eyes. "Where else would I be?" He tried to sit up, coughing. "I thought I was dead." "You were," she said softly, "but I wasn't ready to let you go." He looked at her for a long time, and something flickered behind his tired eyes: gratitude, confusion, and something deeper. From that night, he began to fight. His appetite returned slowly. She fed him warm broth, taught him to breathe deeper, to move again, to walk. He stumbled, fell, cursed. But she was always there, steady as the mountain itself. By spring, the snow melted and the valley turned green again. The villagers came to see the miracle for themselves. The man they had mourned was standing outside his cabin, leaning on a wooden cane, watching the sunrise. When someone asked how he survived, Caleb only said, "No nurse could save me." But she did. And from that day, the mountain had a new story to tell, of a man who almost died and the woman who refused to let him. The months after Caleb's recovery were filled with quiet wonder. Ilara didn't leave the cabin. She said the mountain still needed her, and secretly so did Caleb. He had built his life on solitude. For years the silence was his companion, but now the silence felt empty when she wasn't near. He began helping her in the garden, teaching her how to repair the cabin roof, showing her how to carve small wooden figures out of pine. At night, they sat by the fire sharing stories of the lives they had escaped. Both broken, both searching for something they hadn't known they needed. Sometimes, when the wind howled outside, he would look at her and say softly, "You shouldn't have stayed that night," and she would smile. "If I hadn't, you wouldn't be here to say that." The bond between them grew, not rushed, not spoken, but built slowly, like the roots of a tree deep in the soil. The mountain watched, silent and knowing. One evening, Caleb stood by the river staring at his reflection. The scars from his illness still marked his body, reminders of how close he came to death. Ilara joined him, her hair glowing in the fading light. "You never told me why you came," he said quietly. "I owed you," she replied. "You saved me when no one else would." He shook his head. "Debt doesn't make someone climb a frozen mountain." She looked at him then, her eyes soft but steady. "Maybe it wasn't a debt. Maybe I just couldn't stand the thought of the world without you in it." He didn't answer. He just reached out, taking her hand and rough, calloused, warm. From that day, they were inseparable. They rebuilt his cabin together, added a garden, and opened the doors to anyone lost or hurt who needed rest. People started calling them the keepers of the mountain, the ones who offered shelter and healing when the world turned cruel. Years passed. The legend spread far and wide. The tale of the sick mountain man who no nurse could save, and the woman who did the impossible through faith and love. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, Caleb sat on the porch, his hair now streaked with silver. Ilara joined him, placing her hand over his. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't come that night?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I'd have become part of the mountain. And now?" He turned to her. "Now I think the mountain gave me a reason to live. You." She laughed softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. "You were always part of the mountain, Caleb. I just reminded you how to breathe." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying their laughter across the valley. Below them, the river shimmered like glass. Life had come full circle. The man who had once been broken now healed others, and the woman who had been lost had found her home. In the years to come, travelers who passed through the valley would hear the story whispered at every fire. They'd say no nurse could save the mountain man, until love, pure and untrained, did what no skill could. And long after Caleb and Ilara were gone, their cabin still stood on the ridge, the fire inside still burning, as if their spirits lingered, guarding the mountain, and reminding all who came that sometimes miracles are made not by medicine but by the heart that refuses to give up.